the gel line pen that I wrote this speech with, the water aqua water that I was drinking during prep, the acetone paper I'm using, and the iPhone I'm using to time this speech. All of those things could have had the same function achieved with a far less expensive product. Advertising makes us buy a shitload of useless things. We're very happy to be opposing all advertising in this debate. The model that I'm standing by at Opening Government is that we're basically banning all advertising. Billboards, radios, movies, like anything on TV, all advertising. We're also banning advertising on packets of certain objects. However, we don't really have a problem with, like on food, having nutritional information or anything that is just basic information about the product. We have a problem with all advertising and branding. 3 points of analysis in this speech. Firstly, why ads create a pernicious consumerist culture. Secondly, why we think that product information is actually increased under our proposal. And finally, why we don't think that the corporate right to free speech actually exists. Firstly, we think that advertising creates a pernicious consumer culture for 3 reasons. The first of those reasons is that we think that it cultivates a lack of satisfaction. The methodology of advertising is that they take basic truths about the world, that we need to eat, that we need to wear clothes, and they exacerbate that to the extent that we can actually never achieve satisfaction through doing those very, very basic things. We don't think that vanity was created by advertising, but we think that what advertising now does is confect wants that are far, far beyond the needs that we actually have when we need to buy things, when we need to consume things. We think that this manifests itself in a couple of main ways. Firstly, the idea that we have luxury goods, that there is never one thing that can be the best product in its sort of category of consumerist item, or that very few people actually have the best item of any consumer good. That suggests that you are never actually able to attain the types of wants that advertising is telling you constantly that you need. The idea of mass consumption that says if you don't have certain objects like iPhones, that you're not actually a functioning member of society. That mass consumption leads you to feel like everyone else has access to something that you do not, and that leaves you out of that consumerist culture that's been cultivated by advertising when it is not in fact in any way necessary or beneficial to your life. The second reason why we think that corporate culture creates a bad consumerism is that we think that the most efficient way to advertise things to humans is to sell it on the basis of their fear and their insecurity and their social anxiety. We think this can be seen most perniciously in hygiene products, and I'm going to go through a number of examples here. We think that advertising has sold menstrual products to females as being something that is utterly dirty, as something that they need to hide from everyone, as something that they need to mitigate in all circumstances, when in fact we don't actually think that there's anything unnatural or icky about menstrual products. We don't think that you should have to worry about whether or not people know that you're menstruating, but the fact that they have sold this as an anxiety has embedded a meaning in people's bodies and in people's lives that should not have to exist when it is being embedded by a consumerist culture. The same thing goes for men's deodorant. When they say that you can't get a female, you cannot possibly pick up if you smell like your natural body would. We think that all of that type of advertising, again, leads to the embedding of meaning in society that is not naturally there, but also exacerbates people's insecurities about things that are utterly natural and they should not be insecure about. Thirdly, we think that it creates a hegemonic culture. I've already spoken to you about the mass culture that surrounds iPhones. Let's talk about the gendered advertising of toys for just a minute. We think that advertising creates a hegemonic understanding of things like gender, where we see that all advertising of dolls is aimed at women or girls, and all advertising of things like guns or trucks or building implements, or the toy ones, are aimed at little boys. We think that what that does is allow far too much control over society's norms to a mass consumerist culture that only has the want to create the most efficient form of stereotype, so that when you look at their advertising, you know the message that they're trying to convey to you because you've become so familiar with it that it now resonates with you. That is why they have an efficient reason to create these sorts of hegemonic cultures, so that they can communicate with you in the least amount of space in advertising and in the least amount of time. The second thing that I'm going to tell you in this speech, which I'll do right after I take this point, is why we increase product information. But first, go.
Right, that might have been true in the 50s when they were selling a monoculture. It's not true now that counterculture is also profitable, and there's a range of options for people to choose from, regardless of what they want to buy and how they want to be perceived.
Okay, this is the problem, and this is exactly what I'm going to tell you now. The type of consumerist culture that we have in the moment does not encourage innovation in products or innovation in culture. It only actually encourages an innovation in your brand, which we don't actually think is sufficient to increase diversity in the market. So let's look at a number of things. Coke has not changed its product. It has just changed the way that it brands itself and its way that it wants to communicate with us. The iPhone has not really changed that technologically in the last 5 years, but they tell you every single time they release a new iPhone that this is something that you need. They recreate their brand such that you think that you're being left behind if you're not identifying with the most modern incarnation of that brand. We don't think that the diversity that you talk about in the market actually exists, because we don't have active consumers in the market that I've been telling you about. Why is that? Because people don't think about their wants or their desires before they enter the consumerist market that we're talking about. They are already saturated with that, and that market tells them what they want and tells them what they need, which means that they do not seek out diversity in the market, and it's also less efficient for someone to operate on a diverse basis in the market. Finally, why do we think that corporate rights should not extend to a freedom of speech? We think that the government has a responsibility not just to defend liberty, i.e. inaction. We think that they have a responsibility to ensure people's own autonomy, that when they are making their choices, they should do so in an autonomous way, in a way that is not being influenced by other people, in a way that they are constructing their own forms of wants and needs within a culture. So, we would say that freedom of speech was initially created and is protected in order to enable freedom, autonomy, and difference. We think that the consumerism we have pointed out in this speech does the exact opposite of that. The asymmetry that you get when you have advertising and a consumerist culture that saturates and defines the cultural markets within a society fundamentally strangles autonomy and strangles a difference within society, because it tells you what you should want and what you need in order to be a functioning member, or at least a respected member of that society. What have I told you at the end of this speech? We don't think that corporate rights should enter into this debate, because we think this debate is about the extent to which the government should defend autonomy. Consumerist culture strangles our autonomy. We're very proud to stand against it.
Right, that thanks to you for a speech to follow the next exterior.
Madam Speaker, at opening opposition, we're going to tell you that we celebrate capitalism and what it's been able to provide for countries today and what it's been able to provide for people. We think advertising and communicating your brand and your product to people is a natural part of that, and something that actually informs the consumer and allows them to make better choices. I'm going to talk about three things in my speech today. Firstly, the fundamental freedom to advertise, which we think we fall under this bracket of freedom of speech. I'm secondly going to look at the consumer benefits of advertising, and thirdly I'm going to look at the harms to the market under their model. Before I do, a few points of clarification and then a few points of rebuttal. Let's be clear about what we stand for at opening opposition. The first thing that we stand for is obviously a lack of misinformation within advertising, right? So we think to the extent that advertising exists, we say that the state can regulate some of those harms. So we point you to the fact that many states regulate the advertisements that many pharmaceutical companies can make. We say that you cannot spread misinformation about what's in the tablets or the pills that you may be advertising. The second thing we'll tell you is that we think to the extent that you can weigh up some of the harms that are present in information that is generally presented to the public, we think that can happen under the status quo as well. For example, right, we limit the sale of pornography in things like news agents or whatever. We think the same goes for advertising, and we can regulate some of the content to make sure that it's age appropriate and it's only displayed where it is absolutely appropriate. So let's look firstly at 2 points of rebuttal. We heard from Al about a consumerist culture which is dangerous and something that advertising promotes. We have a few responses. The first is, we simply do not buy that every single individual in society gives into a consumerist culture. There are a lot of people in the world that are perfectly happy living with simple things and do not buy into this idea that they necessarily have to have an iPhone. We think that people are quite rational and will simply do what makes them happy, and we do not think that all the time has to involve the newest technologies. But the second thing we'll tell you is, even accepting their burden, we say in Egypt being able to tweet and be able to revolutionise their country. That wouldn't have happened without a consumerist society that's being able to push for new technologies to do that. We think that's absolutely great. Al said that basically, if you do not have those products, you feel like you're disadvantaged and that you're missing out in society. We think to the extent that no one can ever have everything in society, there will always be some people that are better off than others. We don't think this argument necessarily takes place. We heard that they basically play on securities, that advertisements are basically just there to say, well, that's a weakness in a human being and I'm going to exploit that. We do not think that people are fundamentally that stupid and we reject that characterization of humanity. We think to the extent that a guy might see a deodorant commercial on TV, we don't think guys are sitting there being like, wow, if I wear that deodorant, I'm going to put up with so many chicks tonight. We just do not think that happens at all. Let's talk about gender culture. We heard from the opening government that basically under the status quo, consumerism and advertising promotes a certain gender culture whereby we always have to look at a homogenous idea of what it means to be female and male. Maybe 50 years ago, Madam Speaker, but we think the benefits of capitalism is that it's always responding to market demand. So at the point in which people say, well, maybe I don't want to put my baby in a pink suit or a blue suit, we say that now many children's clothing stores are selling green suits for babies. We think that's great, and we think that responds to a market demand about what's acceptable in society. How do you respond to that? Yes.
Would you support the current restrictions on the advertising of alcohol and gambling?
Okay, we think to the extent that you can stop the misinformation that happens when you advertise certain amounts of alcohol, we think that's fine. But we think that people are rational and will make their own decisions up about whether they want to consume that product. We think that if they see an advertisement that sells a beer, we think that people don't necessarily just want to go out and drink that night. We think people have other factors to take into consideration when making decisions. Let's talk about the freedom to advertise. We say firstly that we think by virtue of the state allowing you to conduct a business, we say that it is important for the state to let you to be able to tell people and spread information about your business and about your product. We think it's fundamental because if you're someone that's worked hard in order to get to a position in society, to be able to establish yourself and be able to sell products to other people in society, we think it is absolutely important that you're able to communicate that information to other people and get your brand across. Because you'll be the one that's worked to establish yourself for that, and we think you deserve to reap the benefits of being able to tell people about the product that you've worked hard on. Let's secondly talk about consumer benefits. No, thank you. We're going to bring you 3 benefits under this. The first is a basic and simple access to information. We want to hear a response from the consumer benefit about how they think people get access to the same types of information under their side of the house. Because we think the benefits of advertising is that you can tell people about your product. You can say, look, we've developed this new product. It's going to be great. And we think to the extent that people are informed about that, we think that actually leads them to make better choices. Because they can weigh up opposing products and say, well, that's an advertisement for Coke, that's an advertisement for Pepsi, that advertisement for Apple is really good. And we think people can make a decision on the basis of that and just about every other product. We say the second benefit of advertising is that it informs people about new products. Under the status quo, there is absolutely no way for new products to establish themselves on the market because established brands will always win out because they have a logo that's already well known to society and new brands will never be able to get their information out there. The last benefit to consumers that is lost under their model is just the sheer convenience of being able to find things when they go out to the supermarket, right? To the extent that you do not know much about the product that already exists out there, we think that potentially means a lot more time in the supermarket, a lot more time finding a product you need. And to the extent that the state should maximise utility, we think it's important that the state should let consumers have access to information. Lastly, let's talk about the harms to the market, because we say there's a few harms to the market under their model. The first is that industries do not compete as well, because they do not have the incentive to be able to go out and provide information against their product that they're competing against. We think that's important. The second thing is new businesses get absolutely screwed under their model, because you're always going to have the bigger, more established businesses that rely on brand recognition, that were allowed to advertise before their models supposedly implemented. New businesses will never be able to break themselves into the market because they will never be able to have the same brand recognition. The last harm under this is that we think you will lose innovation to innovate in a society that values capitalism. Because we say that when you've established a product that you know to be good, you can guarantee that it will probably be successful when you can advertise and get the word out for that. When that's not guaranteed, we think you're less likely to innovate because the benefits of getting your product out there do not exist. Madam Speaker, at the end of this debate, we think there is a fundamental freedom to get your product out there
not all choices are made by the market, but we still have some freedom. The way that freedom was cashed out by the opening opposition was that we don't have to choose between pink and blue for our children now. We've developed a special product to make left-wing parents feel insecure about their justice. That's our point. Even the counterculture is commodified in this modern world. The first thing we look at is the anxiety we're exploited by modern capitalism. Second of all, about why if we don't undermine capitalism, but actually improve it in terms of competition. Thirdly, I'm going to look at whether there's a right to corporate free speech, before moving on to some more substantive material. So, to this third thing about anxieties. Now, what the opening opposition stood for is that companies had to tell the truth in their advertising. Well, they're not going to tell objective lies like, when you drink this alcohol, you will not get drunk. But they can tell things that are subjectively defensible as true. So, for instance, that like the dominant normal way for adults to socialise is to consume a product that damages their brain cells. And we think that social reality is not actually real or truthful. There's nothing truthful about the sense of come to understand that natural smells produced by the body are fundamentally disgusting. When generations ago, people just walked around being a little bit sweaty and felt fine about that, not as though there was some inferior human being who should be shunned by the entirety of society. Also, if it is true that they're not successful in creating these anxieties, we think it's somewhat curious that firms still spend the millions of dollars. If all they were saying was the product benefits, you wouldn't have to invest in ads with the complexity that they do. You could just say on the product package, here are some new things we've added. Instead, what they create is a social reality around that product, which isn't actually about the product improvement, but about self-improvement. And self-care, fundamentally, as we'd say, is defined by the market. But then why? They just said then that, well, you know, this is, they said, well, it's not as though it's the 1950s anymore. It's not like you're just advertising to men and women. No, that's true. The market has got smarter. Now, rather than advertising to me as a man, it advertises to me as a gay left-wing man who's Australian. It finds a very specific consumer profile. But it's not as though my choice has increased. My fundamental identity as a gay man is still produced by advertising. It's just that rather than reading that advertising in a newspaper, I read it in a gay magazine, which still specialises in an elite part of that group, get to dictate on behalf what my specific identity means. Just because I fuck a man rather than a woman doesn't mean I have a number of intended consumer choices, although apparently I do. Well, the circulation of that on the global market has been formed by consumerism. That we used to have more manifestly different understandings of what gender could constitute and what sexuality or race could constitute. That mass marketing means that you exploit that in general. Because that's also true of niche or counterculture marketing, that it's just a new anxiety they're exploiting, that they're selling to the idea that you're different, which ironically you're not, because you're still participating in that consumer system opening.
Advertising gets banned on your side of the house, yet the gendered world that we all live in still exists. Why shouldn't I, as an advertiser, be able to get something that I want within the social construct that exists on both sides of this house?
Because what we want is a society where gender still exists, and we're not saying we're going to remove all patriarchy, where people are more able to resist it, as opposed to multi-million-dollar organisations spending a lot of time reinforcing what's worst about our society, which is when clothing say, oh, but people are marketed to different products. That's exactly right. It's now not necessarily just about making people the same, which is Elle's material, but my material is also about how it makes people different, create social divisions that we think are unproductive, something I'm going to talk about a little bit later. Let's look at competition in this debate. We'd say that we improve capitalism. Opening up, we're actually defending is corporatism, which is the idea that rather than having actual competition on the availability of products and setting prices for the consumer and using the consumer as agents, and consumer sovereignty, instead corporations are the ones that are empowered. We say the way that's true is that rather than actually improving a shaving razor, the way you improve your product, saying my razor makes you more of a man than the other razors we've sold previously. If, as the opposition said, actually innovate that product, make that product innovation explicable to people, so through the method of word of mouth, explain how this product actually does the thing it's meant to do better, people will purchase that product. We say the point of the market is to yield the goods and services that improve people's lives. Then gaining actual improvements and innovations on the basis of the purpose of that product is meeting the burden of opening opposition set for the market themselves. We say that the birth of advertising was not, as they said, to allow new products to arrive, but to stop new products entering that market. The reason that Coca-Cola spends 75% of its budget on advertising rather than the product itself is to stop an alternate soda drink being sold on that market. We say that it's not that you just haven't seen an ad in that other form of cola. It's just that every time you've seen that Coca-Cola symbol, an embedded social media has come along, which means you have a sedimented emotional connection to an object, which means you feel frightened or scared, subtly and subconsciously, when you shift to a different object. We'd say that their proposal, opening opposition, seems to say that before people walk into a supermarket, they need to be told what they want. We'd empower people before they've been set to see in this wash of information to actually understand what they want, to think clearly and critically about the product, to assess them on the basis of the function that's produced, not the reality that's produced. So let's move on to rights and why we think we can undermine corporate free speech. They were happy to say that rather than letting families decide, they were going to let the government decide what children can see. They were happy with some limitations. We'd say that it doesn't just stop at the age of 18. We said that the instances of other examples where we've limited the power of voice in society include the church. But sometimes the state acting in the name of freedom, it's not necessarily acting in the name of inaction. They're preserving individual freedom. The point of free speech was to allow difference, consideration, and debate. We think these are undermined by cultural products, i.e. advertising, that encourage us to think about things in shorthand, that can track the time that we spend thinking about the decisions we make every day, especially with our money. Now I'm going to add some substantive material about precisely what some of the serious harms of that information. We think that the ecological devastation the world currently faces is to some extent attributable to advertising, to the creation of an idea that we need to consume so many more products than we actually need, buy way more clothes than one would actually need to clothe oneself over the period of their life. Just the packaging that surrounds products and the spending money investing in creates a massive ecological damage, but also creates a luxury discourse, such that when we try and challenge people's expectations about what they want and need, when we say, you don't really want and need a bigger car, these people are now understanding that as a part of being a modern American or a modern human being, that a gas-guzzling car is something they need and want. We also say that it forces people to engage in social tensions. The poor people feel so much poorer when, even though they're living in an incredibly wealthy society, the idea that they don't own a branded watch means that they are suddenly poorer or less human. We also think that a lot of people work far too much in our society to purchase things they fundamentally don't need. Capitalism is convincing people to work from 9 a.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning to 9 p.m. at night in order to go and buy a slightly better branded watch, rather than laboring for something that actually is meaningful to them and focusing on social connections is something that is another manifest harm of consumerism. Consumerism didn't create what's dysfunctional about our society. It exacerbated and encouraging all the sell products we don't need to us, which is why we're proud to propose.
for themselves. I think that's very, very important. No, they tell us that we fear
stand here and talk about how advertising works and interacts shows that we live in a society in which we understand consumerism. We understand that people are trying to sell us things. They're trying to do it in the flashiest possible way. We don't think people are as stupid as opening government on its territory. No. They tell us, Mr. Speaker, that this has got to stop like incentives, because now what we're doing is like bridging brands, right? No. We think that like when we want to sell things to ourselves and we understand and recognize that many brands exist in society, that actually forces innovation. The fact that I know that Apple and Samsung, right, sell phones, and Nokia, right, sell phones to each other means that when I go to buy a phone, I check those brands. I see what the coolest phone is on the market. The fact that they know that forces an innovation within that company. Advertising is key to allowing that to happen because it gives me the information I need to facilitate those markets growing. We think that's incredibly important. At the point at which Sydney, no thank you, couldn't actually show us that this actually stops anything, right? And like all the harms they want to bring us are harms we regulate under the status quo, right? Like we have things in some societies like BMI women in advertising. We have things like stopping misleading deceptive conduct, right? Like they are banning everything from like the guy who wants to sell his market products, right? Or like John's lawn mowing on TV, right? We think that's something that's extraordinarily harmful. At the end of this point, you have to know that consumers are not as stupid as they want to say.
You said that you think consumers are really smart. If that's true, why is it that people don't understand what they want from a product before a corporation tells them?
They do understand what they want from a product. When I buy deodorant, right, I don't go, holy crap, I never knew there was something that could make me smell good, right? And if I didn't know that something made me smell good, I benefit by now knowing there's a product that can make me smell good, right? Like, that is the absolute benefit that this brings. Jess told you, new products get fucked under this market because what you have is the world that you know, and unless you happen to accidentally walk into the same shop, you're never going to know about new products. Advertising bridges that gap. That's fundamental. And that's the first point under what it is that this does to help capitalism, right? It helps new innovative products get on the market. I think that's very, very important. But let's talk about what the world actually looks like on their side of the house. Because when you have a world in which advertising doesn't exist, right, the only markets you're ever going to see are the markets you walk into by accident, right? Like, first thing that's important to note under this is that the big brands that we currently know, because they're not going to brainwash us into never knowing any brands, right, are the brands that are huge now. I'm going to walk into a supermarket in Australia, you guys don't know it, I just realised that, and it's going to be like, I'm going to walk into Woolworths or Coles, because they have massive markets that exist there, right? No market's ever going to be able to enter into that, because those brands have the gap, right? The only way we allow things to happen is we allow another brand to advertise. That advertisement allows them to show how it is that they differentiate themselves from like these two markets, right? It allows me to make a choice then about trying them out. Advertising is amazing for that. But they told us, they accused us, Mr. Speaker, of buying into a corporatist world. They told us that we allow big companies to dominate. No, that's what you do, right? Because you entrench big companies. No, the real loser here, Mr. Speaker, are companies who sell things that are unique, right? Things in which I would never just walk into their store by accident, right? Things in which I'd have to research to do. We think there's a huge benefit to people discovering new things for the first time that are outside of the reality in which they normally shop. That's something that's extraordinarily important. The last thing that we tell you about why this facilitates the market is because advertising is key to the corporate nature, or for the capitalist nature itself. At the point at which they recognise that capitalism has massive benefits, at the point at which they realise that companies competing with each other is really important, advertising facilitates that competition. Why? Firstly, because it makes you tell them, like, makes us tell them. Companies have to now explain what it is that is great about their product, right? Like, when I buy a pair of shoes, like, advertising tells me this is a pair of shoes that has like an extra high heel if I'm a woman. It's a shoe that tells me that it's extra comfortable and it has this new technology that allows me to do it comfortably, right? These are things that I want to know, because at the point in which they give us a society in which we are allowed to buy things and want to buy things, and there are things that make us feel good, I want to know about the product that is best for me. And that is what this does. At the end of the opening half of this debate, you have to understand two things. You have to understand that we live in a world in which we buy things, and the things that we buy ought to be compared against each other, and I should have the right to know about the greatest of it. You have to know that capitalism benefits best when we have advertising which facilitates that innovation, facilitates that competition. Mr. Speaker, we oppose.
Closing documents, we have our members of the Cambridge.
hideous and racist and make people that look like me feel insecure in a way they shouldn't have to. Secondly, a lot more on this idea of choice. Specifically, why you prevent majority ideas from being imposed on everyone else, why this dissolves monopolies, and why it results in a greater breadth of products being available for everyone in society. Before I get into these two things, some rebuttal. They said regulation. Yes, no regulation is ever going to stop the fact that advertisements tell you, get this, or your life will be worse off. An advertisement is never going to say, you don't really need this stuff, right? That's what advertisements exist to do. The entire point of what they're telling you is that they always present you a constructed vision of a life because you didn't know that you needed a product beforehand and then tell you you need to get that. That's insecurity you do not need to experience. Then he said countercultures exist. But see, there's a reason they are countercultures because the market has defined what culture is in such a way that you can only be ever seen in opposition to it. But worse, all a counterculture does if an advertisement co-opts it is to give you different ways of feeling insecure. Are you insecure in our quite cool hipster way, or are you going to be insecure in a wear conversions in a lame Cambridge hoodie kind of way? If you buy one product, you still think to yourself, maybe I should have gotten that other one. So advertising changes absolutely nothing with regard to that. Then he said, oh wait, given that society is already patriarchal, why is it wrong? Why should we prevent you from having a right to, exploit the patriarchy and make money off it? Because social structures are bad, and when you use these social structures, you actually reinforce them. So they can't say that we are doing nothing to change what the social structures are, because the very process of appealing to these reconstructs those social structures in the minds of people all across society. Then he said, it gives you information. Yes, it will be tougher, because you want to go into a supermarket and you won't know beforehand which product claims to be able to do this. But there's a very obvious alternative source of information under our model, and that is other human beings, right? Because people will still buy products, and if the products are genuinely bad, they will tell you that they're genuinely bad. If they're good, they will tell you that they're good. The key difference between this and advertising is that here you have the real lived experiences of people telling you what they thought of products, no thank you, rather than a constructed idea of what a particular line was. So we dissolve that part because we have other ways of getting information as well. Then he said, your new products will get fucked because you always have to walk into a shop. Firstly, currently under the status quo, monopolies dominate vastly because they vastly control the advertising market. A single advertisement does nothing to change your opinion, right? Seeing 17 of them in one movie might. That's why the company that can afford to flood the airwaves with advertisements always entrenches its monopoly. A situation where you have to go into a shop is a lot better because you don't see that Apple or Samsung brand. You don't walk into a shop saying, I want to buy Apple, I want to buy Samsung. You don't even walk into an Apple shop because we don't even have Apple there, right? You're supposed to go there and choose something that might be new, that might be innovative, because that's what shops do. So again, that problem a lot better than our time. So, exceptions. Firstly, cultural imperialism, one that actually quite racist, and we don't like that. The legacy of colonialism and the Industrial Revolution that happened first in developed countries, it means that by far the most profitable countries in the world and the ones with the most advertising power around the world are Western, right? They basically perpetuate Western ideals. What are some of these Western cultural notions? Ideas like white is right. That's why people in South Korea and Nigeria go for bleaching. They tell you things like being skinny is what it means to be ideal. That it's good to own a car, for instance. Why is it that local countercultures and local identity can never compete against this? Firstly, because of the fact that these companies that pre-exist just completely dominate. Look at how many players dominate the airwaves, even in places like Thailand, and local companies absolutely cannot compete. But secondly, if there is already a pre-existing market for people who buy these sorts of products, other competing local companies then buy into these same narratives. That's why even in countries like India, local companies sell you skin whitening products, though that's a completely non-existent cultural norm before the fact of colonialism. Why is this incredibly harmful for people? Firstly, because you do in fact just perpetuate racism, right? That certain ways of looking, certain ways of speaking, dressing are always going to be superior. We believe that enforces arbitrary characteristics that people are born with, that's bad. But it also comes with huge personal costs. You have to undergo skin bleaching. You see people who are having anorexia and anorexia precisely because of these narratives. Even in places like Haiti and Bali, people are forced to starve themselves to confront what advertisements tell them it means to be a good-looking woman. What we also tell you is generational divisions, right? Because often the older generation is never the target of these sorts of advertisements. So you see in many cultures, in fact, that kids want to eat McDonald's and don't go for local festivals or don't go for local cultures. They want to own a car. They want to get out of the house fast. Many of these narratives are perpetuated by all kinds of advertising in all kinds of media, especially in movies, the kind of prominent product placement that you get. So you divide generations and you break down social structures outside these countries. And even within Western countries, you prevent people who don't buy into your culture from being able to integrate effectively. That's why you rarely see any satisfactory hair products for black women with curly hair, because the dominant narrative that's enforced by advertising is that to be white is right. But why is it that we increase choice? Firstly, we prevent you from always having to appeal to majority. Simple economics tells you that the best way to make money is to appeal to the dominant modes of thought in society. And when there's a minority, turn them into the majority is always the cheaper option. That's why McDonald's has like lame cultural variants on its products, because it wants to basically co-opt local identities into its own way of selling things. But this is problematic because you whitewash people who don't buy into those particular modes of thought. People who might be gay, people who don't believe in a cultural or your traditional version of family, or what it means to look good, for instance. But you also vastly reinforce monopolies, because monopolies can dominate the airways, and because one advertisement from one individual company, even if you get it on, does nothing, but many do. Monopolies vastly increase the ability to dictate the terms upon which their products are sold. So they can sell things at a much higher price. That reduces your choice, and you shouldn't have to waste that money. But it also bullies small companies, right? If a small company knows I can never advertise my product in a way that can compete with Apple, for instance, you sell your product to them and your company to them. You don't get innovation, you don't get diversification. Everything comes under the pre-existing strong company. But we also get more breadth under our case. Why? Because we make counter-cultures possible. Precisely because you don't have the pre-existing narratives of what it means to be a good product or what you need to buy when you walk into that shop. You have to pick something off the shelf. If it's not Apple, if it's not Samsung, what you've just done is to help a new company step into the market. And if you think that product is good, you will then go and buy that same product again. That never happens under your case. So what do we do that they do? We are not racist. That's good. We increase choice. Let's not least and give you more breadth of products without the true countercultures to flourish. For all these reasons, we're very good.
Let's go. Standing here at the ladies and gentlemen, I'm confident to tell you that I think capitalism would be one of the most powerful forces for social change. They can produce great things for people in the long term and make them feel comfortable. First of all, I'm going to talk to you about identity construction and how it helps locate you within society. Second, I'm going to talk to you about social movements and actually why capitalism with innovation provides a motor to drive that. Before that, a few points of rebuttal. First of all, this weird thing we got out opening where it makes people feel ashamed about certain things. Like it makes people get drunk, it doesn't make people like menstrual blood. Read Deuteronomy, guys. People have been getting drunk and pouring menstrual blood long before advertising. People just tend to think those seem to be weird. Right? We think actually what you've been said to do is to make those things into the mainstream. So we think that it's much easier to talk about sex or whatever, when you've got condom adverts everywhere saying this is a thing that people actually engage in. Sex is a thing that people actually do. We have to wander up to counters and buy lots of them, right? I think that helps normalize it in society. Well, you're not so many of some of you. Secondly, consumerism, right? We really didn't think they were going to bring up the economic externalities of the abandonment of advertising, but since they have, I'll go for it. First of all, we think you do completely destroy a huge section of the economy. You're going to destroy Google, which only depends on advertising revenue, or Yahoo, or Amazon, or all these little things that provide vast mechanisms to bring people together to be hugely useful in society, right? Moreover, right, the thing where they say, well, you locate this in people, you say, you are a white straight man, so you have to buy this, so people are forced to buy this. That's only true if there is one homogeneous product targeted at that, right? There are loads and loads of products targeted at each group, right? So you can choose which of the ones you want to associate with, and the symbolism that goes along with that, right? Moreover, right, the point at which harmful trends exist in society, right? They need a way of performing them. So we point to examples like Sweden, right? They brought out a catalogue. This gender neutral. They showed little girls playing with Nerf guns and little boys playing with dolls. If you want those social messages to propagate, as they already are, because it reflects society, consumers are the most powerful motor for getting those changes out of there, right? Then they said, like, people do this on function instead. No, there are great innovations that come out, right? You have first-time innovations like the first iPhone or the first iMac that get seized on and propagated just because they are so much better than everything else on the market. Then you get funds from that to build a vast research and development facility somewhere in the back to come up with much better functions for those things, right? Moving on to what Ashish brought us then. First of all, Western cultural values skin bleaching team. Still applies. Still applies the point at which the most powerful movies in the world accuse Hollywood and everyone in Hollywood is white, right? We're going to say also that there are large parts of the world where taking on Western values would be a preference to the values that they have at the moment, right? We're looking at incredibly macro, anti-feminist, very racist place in the world, right? I think spreading the soft spread of Western cultural values through globalization, through the media, might be something good. Moreover, like skin bleaching creams, clearly opening off. We don't sell you things that are massively harmful. They burn your skin, they give you blisters, like they destroy you, clearly out because they're harmful, right? Moreover, you appeal to the dominant culture, appeal to all the staff. That's why this is so status quo. No, because the dominant market quickly becomes saturated, right? Because if there's a larger section of society, that's what targets first. That's attractive. But the gay people aren't often as happy as buying the mainstream stuff, right? Or people from certain sections of society who don't belong to the mainstream, don't feel as good buying the things from mainstream culture, right? So you create incentives to produce stuff for them that would exist already. Because the main market is saturated, you need to go for those because you realise there's a new market targeting specialist products. That's why advertising operations is new and keeps things exciting. The dominant culture becomes a saturated market. So identity creation, right? The things I choose to buy take on certain significances in the way I portray myself, right? The music I choose to listen to, the clothes I choose to wear, I don't just do so those good clothes, because I do it because I want to define myself as a person. The problem is, advertising is what creates the backing for what that means, right? So if you see the advertising for a product, and the product says, this kind of people buy that product, and then I do, it's because I want to help define myself as that kind of person, right? That's good in a huge number of ways. First, because I can constantly switch between them. I can invent and reinvent myself by putting on different sets of clothes every day, by moving between those certain substances in society. Remember, I can broadcast the kind of person I want to be. You might want to look like someone who comes from a certain subgroup to identify yourself to other people within that subgroup. The signifier of the clothes that you keep on wanting to wear. Remember, it's just really self-confident. So it gives you a lot of self-confidence. So I might occasionally want to be a bit of a rocker, but I'm really, really not naturally. So I can put on a pair of shredded jeans and like a leather thing-style vest, and I become that person. That gives me a lot of confidence and a lot of happiness, because I can have something that I like now. What's the problem, right? The problem on their side is what the only signifiers you have are essentializing ones. So if I can't define myself, if I'm always wandering around in like the equivalent of a grey prison jumpsuit, I'm always judged on my accent, on my bearing, on the way I come over. I can't produce in these culturally significant products, take those on to redefine myself and escape the essentializing things that I have. It's just this horrific social void where I have no way of locating myself in this society of clothing.
Why can't you see a rocker on the street and he looks cool and go dressed like him? Why do you advertise to get that?
No, because you need everybody else to know what that signifier is too. You need everybody else to walk past in the street to also know that the reason he is wearing that kind of clothes is because he wants to look like that, associate with that culture. If it's not commonly held, you lose all the benefits. Moving on then to social movements, right? We like the counterculture being commodified, right? Because then it is disseminated to the rest of society and that message spreads. On their side of the house, there's no motor driving through that culture. So the existing culture is one that always remains. You see this in things like music, right? We don't deny that there's probably some rich media mogul behind the black soul artists of the 40s, right? We think they were doing it for a profit. We also think that was great, not just as it gave those people money and some startup and some way of getting into the market, because it advanced those dominant social changes, right? Because then that became something that was new. This is what entrepreneurship, driven by advertising, gives you an incentive to do. Look for the new things, look for the cool, look for the counterculture, and propagate that and disseminate that wider in society, right? So that's when you get things like Lady Gaga, right? Who is just countercultural, with sold on being like the big feminist or the new woman. That gets propagated through society by the means of advertising. And then something new comes up, and that constantly revises, pushes society drives the societal modes forward. You don't get that if the only thing you've got are like the local things, like what your teacher tells you to do, what your parents want you to do. You know, if you're outside the realm of those advertising, right, it helps spread it into those positive societies where there wouldn't be any other influence. Global influence is good. It gets the message to those people who wouldn't get it otherwise. Mr. Speaker, we think capitalism is good. We think capitalism can change people. We think it can locate them in society. We think it can allow them to identify themselves to themselves as well. For these reasons, I'm very proud of this panel as well.
I'd like that speaker to speak about what branch behavior A right now.
brands, and that means I can express myself in the way I want to. This completely ignores the fact that identity is not coming from you organically. It is being created by the world around you to think you want that identity, and which companies actively play into try to create those very identities for you to buy, right? That's why the entire explanation from the last speaker is factually false and created from other ways. The example that gives us a cultural difference is Lady Gaga. We are not banning Lady Gaga. We still get cultural differentiation and the ability to express identities without the need for advertising, music, films, figures in lots of different ways is not necessary to have this policy. Firstly then, what is this debate about? What are the main two questions we think about in analysing this debate? Firstly, we think, does this actually help consumers in terms of narratives and countercultures we actually get? And secondly, does it help consumers in terms of choices and monopolies and the breadth of products? Firstly then, do we have any sort of common narratives, and do we get countercultures? Why do we think we get no countercultures, or if we do, they're really bad? One, right? Because there's massive disincentive to create countercultures, because if something sells, you like to buy into that product. That's why, for example, in Thailand, no company ever tries to sell cream for Thai women, because they simply cannot compete with Nivea, which sells whitening cream, right? There's no incentive to buy into counter narratives. It is already a monopoly held by one company. Secondly, all the countercultures are different expressions of consumerism. That's why goths all look the same, right? Because we essentially think that all that is created is a counterculture, which again depends on manipulating narratives or what certain identities you should hold. We don't have actually genuine expressions of difference, but rather simply different types of consumer narratives of what you should be different, to be a very counterculture. So the same way we think they're simply created. Which hold my first opposition, look. All that's happening is people responding to the market demand, which is heteronormative. No, they create that very demand when they tell you that to be a good family and to buy the products that are good for family, you should be a nuclear family with 2 kids and a dog, right? So they play into those stereotypes and enforce those stereotypes through advertising, and that's why we think these countercultures will never be effective, right? Secondly, I think countercultures are generally impossible because people simply don't have the money to compete with mainstream advertising in a way which means they ever get a big enough buy-in into the system. Secondly, we're told by the previous speaker, great, this means we can define who we are as a person and we can identify products based on this. We think that's massively profitable, but they can essentially buy into a narrative that says, if you want to be different, buy my product, that will make you different and happier, when in fact it provides no influence in any way, and rather defines who you are based on that difference, which is again simply the exact same type of consumerism. Notice also, you can see people on the street who look like rockers and decide to dress like them. You can see bands who look like rockers and decide to dress
if I want to have an identity that's signified by kind of clothing and belong to the community of other people who wear that, why is that less real or valuable to me simply because there's a profit motive behind it?
Because it's been falsifiably created to try and manipulate you spending your money, right? So you're inherently being manipulated every time you do that. We also think you can achieve it through other ways if you really want to, advertising like in popular culture. There is no reason why that needs to be true advertising, like to ever get those types of things. Okay, so why do we think you're enforcing off is this sort of in extension? Firstly, we'd say, right, there's no innovation we talk about right from second off. Why? Notice the iPhone had tons of flaws, right? The iPhone didn't work to begin with. It is not true that innovation is created by these types of things. Secondly, we're told, look, this creates a massive research project. No, it doesn't. And if it does, they can still exist. If companies make lots of money through word of mouth, through branded products, through being a good product, it just encourages companies to become rich because their products are the best, rather than effective advertising and the monopoly that can spend on advertising. Then that company who is the best can spend more research, right? Then we're told this ruins Google because Google can no longer advertise. Sure, Google can charge coupons for its users, or it means that other companies are better because they can become search providers that aren't Google different alternatives to Google, right? We don't have that an issue in the debate, right? Okay, so then what do we have to think about in terms of what's told about choice and the way in which people appraise decision making and explanation? There's a massive tension from first off when they told you, guys, you're treating people like they're stupid when you say they play into narratives. But then we're told advertisers need to explain to people what they want. This makes no sense. If you are clever enough, first off, to not be bought into advertising narratives, you're not clever enough to need someone to explain to you what product you want, right? We think that people inherently do not know what product they want, but are told what to want by the very advertisers who advertise to them. In that way, we think your ideals of what you want are artificially created and is actually harmful. It encourages you to do things like buy whitening cream when in fact other alternatives would be better. By the same virtue, avoid ever getting alternatives because the monopoly is created by advertising. Therefore, what do we have to discuss at the end of this debate? We have to notice that firstly, there's no choice in this action. Counter-narratives and counter-cultures do not provide this choice. Last, to create monopolies, as the shoe tells you, and you never create the type of counter-cultures you want because certain narratives of truth and what you need to be useful or good are always created by advertising and are certainly entrenched by the advertising. For all these reasons,
Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here. So let's look at the debate we've had so far and show you why exactly we feel the representation of what matters to us, what makes us happy and successful and prosperous in the intent of being misrepresented, how to achieve this as being misrepresented, and why the real impact here is not exactly why people often thrive and feel better and happier against certain conceptions of who they are, often identified by products. So, first of all, on a lot of the top-hat stuff we had here with regards to the arguments that people become, aspirationally greedy. This was a big contention that one of the big flaws here is we're always left striving for things beyond our reach, and this causes a concrete harm with regards to our happiness and dissatisfaction. Why do we think this is incorrect? Well, first of all, we would say that no. A lot of advertising is often associated with a lifestyle, but to claim that this lifestyle is always empirically more wealthy or more opulent is just simply not true. Caterpillar boots sell off the idea that, they appeal to the working man. Weetabix sells you a wholesome lifestyle, one of ultimate contentment, much simpler values. We think the real thing you have here, the real problem, is when your neighbour has a slightly nicer car than you, or when your friend has a slightly nicer watch than you. We think all those harms there with regards to dissatisfaction are just mere relativism that have existed for centuries, for thousands of years, are a problem under either of them. We think that the idea that you might be unhappy because someone is slightly wealthier or slightly better off than you is a problem not of advertising, but of proximity, of awareness, of common sense. That is the harm there, ladies and gentlemen. We do not think it's fair to say that's an entirely result of advertising. More importantly, we would say in a situation now when you've actually... Yeah, exactly. The actual countercultures themselves, which are then propagated by this, with regards to exactly what matters for people, are not explicitly dictated and created by corporations. This is just simply not the case. We think what frequently happens, the point at which, as a gay, liberal, Western Australian man, brother said, you outline a conception of what you enjoy, what you like, but that is not something that is purely a one-way street with regards to companies telling you that. of your own taste and choices, and you allocate and ascribe yourself to things that reflect and ultimately respond to that. We think that it is an incredibly symbiotic relationship, to the point at which consumers and designers are listening to people, are ascribing things to them they think they will benefit from, and the people do, they succeed. It is a meritocratic allocation of counterculture. It is an allocation that is ultimately beneficial. We don't think there are concrete harms there. But moreover, the alternatives we've been given, and much of the extension seems somewhat incorrect with regards to how this actually works. Now, we were told that, first of all, word of mouth is an alternative. We think that it's simply not true that it is an equivalent alternative, or this whole debate would be a wash. Word of mouth is obviously clearly worse at ensuring that we know about the products out there. But more importantly, we'd say that a lot of products don't operate as they would have us believe. It is not the case that if we have a situation where we only have word of mouth and people trying lots of different things, products will succeed better. Because it is not the case that you are well advertised, so you do well. Markets are meritocratic. The first iPhone had problems, but revolutionized technology, massively mobilized connectivity, was a net benefit to every facet of information and communication, and succeeded. It made them lots of money. So the monopoly they derived from the research and development, they made better products. The monopoly was not the marketing. The marketing was the result of the monopoly. You have people creating better products with ultimately far superior facets and far superior details that thrive in a meritocratic market. More importantly, at the point at which you say people should try every product and find the one that's best, the reality is a lot of the market is bad. It's unimpressive. It's horrible. So the good stuff there, the innovation they wish to propagate, only comes upon which the gems can walk onto the grand stage and say, we have 5 or 6 features that are just better than yours. And the result of this is, quite obviously, people saying, oh, I saw that advert. And however they want to picture people aren't stupid, you can't empirically lie in adverts. So at the point at which an advert seems to be too good to be true, people test it. And when they test it, new innovating products can thrive in a far more specific and far more actualized way than people simply trying and telling their neighbours, ladies and gentlemen. So we think the harms on innovation fall very much on our side of the house. And we think that the empirical evidence we have iPhones, and we kind of dismiss it as the fact that capitalism has done a very good job of, making us very, dull to the fact that our technology is incredible, and a result of this competing markets. But more importantly, is the idea of the extension we got later on the idea of Western imperialism through advertising. Now, first of all, we'd say that there are obvious harms to a conception of idealizing certain facets of glamour, certain facets of fashion. But these thrive from things like fashion shows, from Hollywood, from media, from television. And the point at which every single superstar is white, then probably people want to be white. We don't think that's because they've seen adverts with a white person holding an iPhone. The reason the white person is holding an iPhone is because Leonardo DiCaprio is white and awesome and amazing. It's because Hollywood is white and awesome and amazing. We think these are harms and flaws, but harms and flaws that are existing on both sides of the debate. The specific impact of advertising on that particular conception has only been tied to things like skin whitening creams, which we think, under any common conception of what is appropriate to sell, we could say would be met up with being horrifyingly bad for you. So, more importantly then, on the actual concept of countercultures, this is where the real crux of the debate comes in, because everyone's kind of agreed it's about empowering people to make choices distinct from the homogeneous mass. We would say, first of all, there is a consistent, and we think, false intentional proposition, that if something is artificial or ascribed, it has no value. That is not the case, ladies and gentlemen. We are all aware there is a corporate hegemon grinning cynically as we hoover up products, but we enjoy it because we reflect the fact that we are not stupid, that we are self-determining individuals capable of conceiving and concepting of exactly what matters with regards to us and how we conceive us. We do not think it's fair to say that you can only just assert, as was done by second proposition, that it is artificial, ergo bad. That is not the case. Many things are artificial, but love is a result of chemicals within our brain. It's not particularly meaningful beyond that. It is something we still hold value to. Happiness is very equivalent. So therefore, the counterculture is more important. And I'll take those.
Why don't we get a better type of counterculture though, where it's not artificial, can actually do things like bread?
Okay, that's what we say. This is where Ben stuff comes in. Because countercultures are not direct results of corporate interest. But corporate interest liquidates them with the capital and interest to ensure that they can propagate the interest these cultures actually advocate for. We would say the point at which there is a meaningful black counterculture, which is lubricated through the finance of black soul music, that is the point at which that music and that counterculture can benefit people. That is the point at which the conception of blacks in the media is reinforced by the advertising of said singers. That the idea of blacks being artists and contributors as a result of a counterculture being found, i.e. jazz, i.e. groove, i.e. funk, and being mobilized by a consumer capital interest to ensure that they both profit, but simultaneously ensure this is meaningful and this actually makes both the black people who benefit happier, but the people who enjoy sure the music's happier. It's artificial, sure, but it's certainly not meaningless. It's certainly not valueless. It is something that gives a social good, a great pleasure, as a result of a capitalist interest. And we do not buy, as they claim, that this is achievable under their mechanism. We do not think at the point at which you have a homogeneous blob you cannot market to, the obvious incentive is to try and find specific subsections of that homogeneous blob. The obvious incentive is to then just pander to that blob. Because you can find the countercultures, you can mobilize and liquidate them into profitable subsections. You cannot end up in a situation where small companies can target themselves specifically and ultimately mobilize people who would otherwise have no voice. Ben told you exactly why artificial does not equal valueless, and more importantly, why these artificial but important parts of our culture would not exist under their proposition. That was the crux of the debate. That is why we won today. Thank you.